Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of my reaction to the downfall of Final Fantasy XIV Asmon Reacts video. This was requested by Titus, who wanted me to know my thoughts on this hot take so far since the announcement of the new job and other things that they just dropped for Final Fantasy XIV. Part 1 was roughly around 30 minutes, and we're so far right into the first point that Lynx is making. So Lynx and Asmon are talking in this case with the reaction, and I think this will be a really good time to kind of pick up and continue. So if you didn't see the last video, be sure to go check that out. I think you're going to get a lot of really good stuff from that reaction. And then if you enjoy, maybe check out this one. Or if you did enjoy the first one and you're back for the second one, thank you so much for being back. Guys, the only thing I want to say at the start of this video is if you guys could help me grow over on Instagram. I've been challenged by my fellow comedians to get over 1,000 followers on that platform. The top link in the description will get you over there. So if you use Instagram, I do appreciate that support, but no pressure to do so. Let's get into the reaction. Lynx just made the point about how everything's so formulaic, how everything is just, there's no surprise, there's no delight anymore, and that in and of itself frustrates veterans.
Boss. Another 4 bosses in the Savage tier. Except actually the final boss of the Savage tier is 2 fights that are half finished to form a 5 boss raid tier. Pfft, whoa, dude. What if they just made 1 fight that was fully complete? Okay, sorry, that's besides the point. I got a little off my rocker there. The point is, veteran players that have been around for a few cycles of the 14 formula are just getting burnt out. And what's strange about this is Final Fantasy XIV has grown immensely. I mean, the popularity of this game has only gone up over time, which obviously...
Well, I mean, to be fair, that's showing 2021, which was the highest viewership of the game, because that's whenever a lot of people moved over to start playing it. Let's look at it right now. Okay, so that's the way it is.
Yeah, massive wave when Asmon came in, and then essentially, in a way, took a lot of the stereotype that people start to assume and then broke that down, which brought in a huge new wave. I've seen people actually afraid that the game's coming to Xbox, that it's just going to ruin the culture. And honestly, I think some of the culture, like, there's a lot of good. Some of the culture sucks ass. And I honestly, if the new waves of people can help balance out that kind of toxic console war mindset, then I think overall that's going to be a huge win. As will it peak beyond what we've seen already? No idea. But also, I just wonder if the new data center that's cloud-based is driven by Microsoft in this case. That seems like a winning proposition deal for both companies.
Is right now. Like, that's where he was showing. You see kind of what I'm saying, right? It's like it's not indicative.
means way more.
Nobody plays it on Steam. Steam isn't the correct amount. Okay, I'll be
okay, to talk about that, that's like, I see people push onto that. It's a heat map. It's not that nobody plays on Steam. Plenty of people play on Steam. In fact, you can also play on Steam Deck, which is a great device to play Final Fantasy XIV on if you haven't already. Should come to GeForce Now. Come on, Square. Bring it to GeForce Now. Let's go. But I see people push on that because it doesn't represent the total community. It represents the heat map because gamers are all the same. We're not going to sit here and, somebody who's playing on console and somebody who's playing on just normal PC, like, they are still going to be subject to the same, ebbs and flows of that. So it acts as a representation of the map, which ties in with the population report summaries and stuff that we see that are produced by the community as well. So when somebody pushes on the Steam aspect of it, like, I'm like, all right, man, like, I don't think you understand what we're actually discussing. And if you do understand what we're discussing, then you're misrepresenting the numbers intentionally.
right back. I'm gonna go downstairs and just contemplate what I just heard.
You see, Bellular tweeting out, Final Fantasy 14 players, do you own the game via Square Enix or via Steam? 98% out of 10,000 voting that they own the game via Steam. If you've ever tried to purchase this game directly and have to go through all the hoops, Steam seems like the best way. Like, if somebody was saying, hey, how should I play on PC? I say pick Steam. Now you're going to be locked into the Steam ecosystem for pre-orders and so much more. That's not a bad trade-off. Not going to lie.
Also, Chatter is right. Most people don't play Final Fantasy on Steam. It's cheaper to use the in-house launcher. Okay, well, go ahead and if you have a high school diploma, if you have a college degree, time to ask for a refund. Need a refund.
Need a refund. Get it back on that. Yeah.
revenue, and yet, what's to show for it? In fact, some of you might not know this, but in Heavensward, we actually got 2 dungeons per patch. We've steadily been getting less.
In ARR, we got 3 dungeons per patch. Like, this isn't new, and I get that it feels new for some people to feel like this, but this has been happening since then. And there's things that I think we lost that are unfortunate as a part of the 1.0 that I'd love to see. But that is just what it is.
Dungeons with every expansion because you know what Square Enix does?
What is it?
Instead of investing the increased revenue to grow the game, they only ever move development to different pieces of content, never increasing the overall amount of content. The mystical...
He doesn't know this. This is a massive assumption on his part. There's no way we do know that information. It just feels like that. So it sounds like right now Lynx is talking from an emotional truth perspective and not from like a actual practical perspective, because they've added people to the team. But he is correct that it's like they kind of move from content to content. So we get less dungeons, but now we get Criterion or something like that. And so, man, I don't find anything shady or squirrely about a company deciding to spend their money, how they decide to spend the money that we give them. Once we hand them the money, it's not ours to tell them what to do. That's their job to manage it. And we got a new CEO who's massively pro Final Fantasy 14, because I think it's kind of the one property they have that is actually making a ton of money. And hopefully we can see them continue to stop making these real wild exclusive deals, because I don't think that helps the games and the communities around the games at all. But I'll stand by that and I'll die on that hill for sure.
Question everybody's had this expansion is, where is Endwalker's Eureka and Bozja equivalent?
I think that Final Fantasy has a philosophy, like that team has a philosophy of not too much. And this is something that they did kind of with Final Fantasy 16. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but I wish there was like more content in the game. Like more hunts to do, more different stuff to do. I think that like what they worry about is like overwhelming players.
I can agree with that. I can actually totally get what Asmon's saying in terms of that philosophy, because Yoshi P's talked about, overwhelming players and putting out too much content too soon. And so really the only people who are punished, are those who are diehard, sticking with the game day in and day out. They're the ones who suffer, where somebody who takes a break and comes back all of a sudden has a bunch of content. When I come back and play Dawn Trail at some point, and assuming that I lose the rest of the weight, that I'm already down 40 pounds, shooting for a whole 100, trying to get over 100 pounds lost. When that day comes, like if that is around 8.0, then I'll have even more content to play through. So whenever that day comes, like then I'm going to have whatever's happened between then, and I'm not going to suffer for it at all. I've been enjoying many other games. It's been wonderful to be able to play these other games. And I think that's the healthiest gamer mindset. But there's this attractiveness to my game, right? There's this attractiveness to playing only one game to rule them all in this case. So I think that's a personal issue. That's got to be sometimes at some point you got to look at a gamer and say, you got to take some personal responsibility for your life. You got to pay off your debts. You got to stop living paycheck to paycheck. You can do these things. Just take your life by the reins and stop letting yourself get lied to, right? Stop lying to yourself, I think, maybe in most cases. Stop using Final Fantasy as your religion or your drug or your girlfriend, right? Like, get a life, figure it out. You can totally do it. And if you need help, you can always ask. I'm here to encourage you guys. There are so many great things about this life, and it's worth living. Keep it up. Anyway, don't be a
over delivery. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's called Criterion Dungeons. No Ishgardian Restoration equivalent in Endwalker? Yes, there is. It's called Island Sanctuary.
Ugh,
Less dungeons
so
and Stormblood
disappointed in that.
onwards? Well, that's to make way for Ultimate Raids. You see, despite FF14 exploding in popularity and the cash shop overflowing with overpriced garbage to milk the player base, Square Enix has never...
As I've wanted to say again, all cosmetics and all microtransactions are overpriced. There is no actual intrinsic value attached to any of them. They all have perceived value that is invented by the developer. There is no actual reason why these things cost the prices that they do. They are simply decided on by the developer.
Yes. That's all I want to add there. Oh my gosh, yes. And I'm glad that the cash shop is being called out because people like to go and defend it because it's not directly connected into the game itself. I think that does help in a way because it takes an extra step. But we're just like, there's no subscription MMO really, right? Like there's just WoW and 14, and maybe there's like a handful of others that I'm not even thinking of, but they all have cash shops, right? Like they're sub plus models as opposed to like sub only in this case.
Never added content to the game, only replaced content.
Same with every
and
game.
this formula is just getting stale. Do I really want to spend $15 a month just to do another 24-man raid that is exactly like the ones that came before it? Topic 2. Repetition breeds apathy. Beyond
And I think this is kind of true. Is like, and like in general, I feel like there's a lot of people that feel this way about a lot of games. Like, because obviously I'm not like playing Final Fantasy super currently, and I didn't finish the end game content. So like I never really hit this wall with Final Fantasy, but I know that like for WoW and for Lost Ark and for I would say maybe a little bit of New World too, MMOs have a really big problem about feeling kind of samey, where it's like, oh, this is the same as what we've had before. This is
But isn't that just the developer's response to mitigating risk? And MMOs are the most expensive genre to make and the most risky genre. And I think that is one of the reasons why we continue to see that sameness. And that's where I talked about in the first video, theme parks versus sandboxes, like where sandboxes is not nearly near as popular, but it has such a more, I think, dedicated and passionate player base that plays for a much longer and more invested time because your investments reward you. They pay themselves off with time. And that kind of change has an immediate reaction. We saw that with Final Fantasy 14 1.0. It was a sandbox and people rejected it. It was also flawed many, many ways. That's why I'm really hoping PAX Day or, Ashes of Creation or something like that literally can, step in and truly do something spectacular in the long run. So we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, it's the same stuff as before. It's the same as before. And people just kind of feel like it's repetitive in general. And that's the way I felt about Diablo 3, for example. That's why I stopped playing it, because like every season I was doing the exact same stuff. Like I'm just playing the same game again. Well, what the fuck? That's what an MMO is, though.
No, it's what
Classic's not like that.
Well, yeah, Classic is, and as somebody who I can't speak to WoW, that's where it's like a lot of people have that ingrained expectation, and so all of a sudden when you start to go outside of that, people are immediately uncomfortable. So how do you invite people into that experience? That's going to be the next challenge, unless Square Enix decides to do with, let's say it's 17 or 18, let's say they do another Final Fantasy MMO follow up here. I would assume you would start to build that and you would start to target that for the next generation of consoles as kind of like, here's a brand new piece of technology. We're going to sit here and make this. That would actually put 14 almost coming up on 20 years, like obviously maybe a little bit sooner than that. And then, man, geez Louise, you'd be looking at, 11 to 30 plus. Geez. Oh, anyway.
Classic WoW isn't like that. It is? Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. It is. But like it takes a lot longer to get through it all.
just sticking to the formula for content releases, FF14 has also lost all creativity when it comes to encounter design, which was arguably FF14's greatest strength outside of the story for years.
This is a weird point for him to make, because I'm just going to push back on him and his idea right here. Namely because he hasn't been playing it, right? I haven't been playing it. So there could be content that addresses that very point, but he hasn't experienced it, which he admits he's not playing the game. So I think it's probably essentially where he was just kind of got caught up and yeah, things are looking like this, or that mechanic looks like that, in this encounter or that encounter. But come on, like that seems like a weird point to try and make when you're not actively playing it. It's not a point I would make, right? So
in fact, one of my most popular videos on this channel is me selling the game to WoW players on how great the boss encounters are. But again, for those of us that have been around for a while, we have started to see the...
I don't get that take. Wait, what? Wait, what's the... That's kind of a bad take. What's wrong?
Ah, good. He agrees.
This guy's takes are bad, and counter design is better than ever.
See?
Let me go
it
back
could be better than ever right now.
Because like, people found this very problematic, what he said.
repetition 4-man raid that is exact. Beyond just sticking to the formula for content releases, FF14 has also lost all creativity when it comes to encounter design, which was arguably FF14's greatest strength outside of the story for years. In fact, one of my most
so you're saying the fights aren't creative. Okay, why?
popular video.
See, I think it's the lack of the investment, right? You can't go farm like those pieces of content for materials that then gets put into the economy, which then people generate into even cooler stuff, right? Like player-driven economies solve a lot of that problem, but they do create their own problems, right? You know, like it's not this. There's no perfect solution. Hope nobody thinks that whenever I'm advocating for what my preference is, that I'm like, oh, this is better. It's not better. It's just different, and it solves the problem that people are addressing or complaining about. Not that it doesn't, you know, introduce new problems.
Videos on this channel is me selling the game to WoW players on how great the boss encounters are.
Why?
But again, for those of us that have been around for a while, we have started to see the utter lack of innovation when it comes to boss design, even in the ultimate fights. Every mechanic is just a random combination of group stacks, prey markers, tether grabbing, limit cut, tower soaking, or god forbid clock spots. I mean, it's all been done before. There is no interesting new mechanics that challenge your gameplay ability. If you're a veteran player or no one, tell me if this sounds familiar to you. Oh, this mechanic is like this other mechanic in that other boss. Every boss is just a reskin of mechanics used in previous fights over and over. All you have to do when learning a new Final Fantasy XIV boss is find the safe spot, because do you know what every FF14 mechanic in existence is? Stand and let thing resolve. Seriously, when I had this realization is when I lost.
I think there's a lot of mechanics in Final Fantasy that are the exact same as in WoW.
Yeah.
Like,
That's why I continue to advocate that I love open world content. People are like, oh, it's just a Zerg fest. Sometimes, but it's always different. Like you never know what to expect because you're just dealing with so many people. And I love that beautifulness of what the MMOs offer. And Final Fantasy XIV, in a way, outside of hunts and, you know, Bosha and Zadnor and, you know, Eureka, like, oh man, like that's where I'm like, there's such potential for that for me in this game. And I'm really hoping that they continue to make that kind of investment, or at least see that as like, what do they want the next MMO to do? And I think the evolution of the MMO in my mind is the sand park. It's not the theme park. It's not the sandbox. It's the blending of those two systems that allow you to then have that level of investment payoff for those who want it, but also the ability to step in and enjoy a story and step out like they currently do in the current state of 14.
there is, and subjectively wrong is someone who clears Savage and Ultimates is better than ever now. Yeah, it's like, for example, like let's see what the next mechanic is.
All interest in
happens in this
FF14 encounter design. Stand and let thing resolve. That is every
Okay, so you have to go
mechanic.
and kill an ad?
There is no innovation to the
Okay, that's Raw Den. Raw Den has this exact same mechanic. There are two different mobs that spawn on opposite sides of the room, and you have to decide which one you're going to kill. And based off of the one that you kill, it's going to do different things.
gameplay. Just simply a new twist on stand and
Let thing resolve.
Where other MMOs have moving platforms that require careful jumping, boss attacks that
Moving platforms that require careful jumping. So that's actually one of the things I really liked about Wayfinder, is that Wayfinder implemented and integrated actual platforming into its boss fights. Like that one fight that I did where you had to like move against like the squares or like Andros and like the original Star Fox. I thought it was really cool. I like that. And also I've said many times, right? Volton is one of the greatest. It is the best ARPG isometric fight that I have ever played, and nothing even comes remotely close. It is amazing. It's actually disgusting how good it is.
One of the things I do wonder, though, is that as they've been overhauling their technology stack and their framework, like we're seeing with the multiple dies, and you might not equate mechanics to the multiple die system from a memory management perspective, I do wonder that as they continue to refine their core game, the core tools that it opens up them to create new things like that. But you still run the risk of doing something that people then hate, and that's not the story. So I tend to see where they're Final Fantasy 14 is their safe harbor for the time being, And I don't, unless the players actually actively demand it, like will I think it ever change? Because Yoshi P wants to make the game that the players want to play, and I think from the metrics, that's exactly what he did, and that's what's going to continue on.
Can be countered, which dynamically changes the fight every pull, or using.
But the thing is, though, is like with Lost Ark, there are the same problems, though.
Yeah.
The same problems are like there's X3 plus 1. There are the soak transitions. There is the counter thing. Yeah, Lost Ark has the same issue. It's just a different list of complaints. Like, for example, like you don't really stack up a lot for like big AoEs. Like you do every once in a while in Lost Ark. Like, for example, like after the Vicus typing test, after I fail it, everybody would usually stack up for like a Gunlancer shield or something like that. Sure. But for the most part, you don't really do a lot of stacking. But otherwise, there are a number of things where you behave totally differently because the game is functioning differently. But inside of that game, there is a lot of sameness.
Height and gravity.
Yeah, Velganos pizzas. How many bosses have a Velganos pizza now? I know that Vicus has Velganos pizza. What other bosses have that? Brel, Gate 6. Clown? Clown has Velganos pizza? Yes. Oh, I now I remember because we usually sidereal that. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's what I'm saying, right? Is like Lost Ark has the same problem.
To create fun moments. All FF14 has is.
And also, by the way,
stand and let thing resolve.
I have to tell you that if you compare that to Maiden of Vigilance in Tomb of Sargeras, there is a lot of also stand and let thing resolve. And the soak there is the exact same thing. And the slam here is you just stand there and let it resolve. It's the exact same mechanic. Now, I do think that World of Warcraft in general does verticality better than Final Fantasy. In terms of like the fights. Like, for example, like you go down here and it knocks your character up. I think that's really cool. Yeah, at least from what I've seen.
Final Fantasy 14's done some of that, but I would have to take his word on the WoW side of it.
But overall, I think it's just...
But Yoshi P continues to say he wishes he had WoW's budget. So, like, it could be just a budgeting issue. And maybe the new CEO will have a huge impact on the future development, because they did come out and say, we'll spare no expense. And what people assume is that you feel that instantly. And I've been always saying, like, I feel 7.0, you'll start to feel that we'll spare no expense on this game much more deeply.
Like, WoW has different problems.
Moments. All FF14 has is stand and let thing resolve.
See, that's like standing inside of it and then having you can see obviously the damage is split, I believe, with all the people that are like in that group, and so they're like soaking it together. So there's a number of bosses that work like that. They're actually the term is, well, Saber Lash is usually referred to as a tank soak that only tanks soak, but like something like this, there's plenty of bosses that do that. Like Ultraxion does that. Major Domo Staghelm does that in Firelance. There's many bosses that do a mechanic that's exactly like this.
Grab the tether and let it resolve. Go to clock
Blood Queen Lanethel in ICC.
Spots and let it resolve. Hide behind the rock and let it resolve.
There's a lot of those in WoW too. Saffron.
And this repetition of reusing old mechanics over and over on top of a non-changing gameplay format.
This just feels like he went from an unknown game, a new experience, and being able to enjoy it, to understanding the game, understanding what it is. And so that ties back into the no surprises. So there's nothing that seems to have that surprise and delight, which means in a way, like maybe play another game, step away from video games for a while. There's this sense of chronically online, chronically gamers who complain about some of the dumbest stuff that doesn't really matter. That, it's like, okay, for them it does, because that's everything. That's their whole reason for being. And that's why I continue to encourage people to pay off their debts, own their life. Don't let all these, $1 billion and $1 trillion banks control you. And I think like that in and of itself is all somewhat related. So a lot of people who maybe don't feel like they have much control in their life, feel like they can do something here in this virtual world, but then the virtual world becomes very stale because it's a game designed to take money out of your pocket and put it in Square Enix's or any other game by any other publisher in that case. But yeah, all right, let's keep it going.
Formula leads to apathy. No longer are we challenged and asked to improve our gameplay ability. We are simply tasked with finding the safe spot and standing there until the thing resolves. And challenge in FF14 has actually been going backwards. The game is not even maintaining the difficulty it used to have.
I don't think it's ever maintained the difficulty, with maybe rare exception for the ultimates, but I even hear that isn't so ingrained into the differences. We've noted this every expansion. Like, as soon as the expansion drops, it feels like all the previous content just becomes just way easier, and that's a leveling aspect, a gearing aspect, perhaps a knowledge aspect. But yeah, like that's where I want to see them rethink their level sync, because I think whenever I hit level cap and I'm running low level content, it's very boring, very slow, and the lack of skills, I think they could really rethink that entire system, and it would benefit the game and the players in the long run, thus bringing in, content. People are like, oh, that would ruin the difficulty. They already have. Like, there's no difficulty to protect in this case. And I don't think, and based off the pattern and what we've known, I would predict, yeah, I think Criterion is going to get easier naturally. But could be wrong. Would love to be wrong.
But actually making everything easier and easier.
I don't know about this, because it's kind of hard to say, because isn't the Omega Protocol, which is the most recent raid that they did, the ultimate, isn't it the hardest one they've ever done? I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, but I think what Lynx is talking about is literally about how past content and the content that they have as a part of the, let's say, call it a vault, continues to get easier. It's not that they can't introduce new content that challenges you, but overall it's getting easier. But that also brings into mind that people learn more about the game. They learn more about the jobs. Like, you have more people who know more about it, so your knowledge base also increases, which would naturally, again, that all goes back into my first reaction part of this is that what is difficult content? I think of it all as a function of time. What content is going to take so much time? And that is essentially how I think about it. I think about it as content that takes a lot of time versus content that is very easy to pick up and put down. And then you have the spectrum as opposed to some difficulty curve in this case, because people, they'll get better. Like they might get a better piece of hardware. Who knows? There's so many different things that comes down into it. But let's let Asmon finish his thought, and then it looks like he's about to make, Kamali's about to make point 3. So we might just table point 3 for the next video. If you guys aren't seeing, we're breaking this up just because it's so much to talk about here.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people saying like it broke their guild, like they quit the game over it. It was so bad.
That could also be the story.
The Savage Tier 2, yeah. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Pick 3.
So, yeah, but that's always going to happen, right? There's so many stories. I was talking with Comic Story, and it's like, yeah, eventually just like the reason to do so dips out. And then what happens is that they'll create an expansion, and people will be curious about the expansion. Does it address all the issues? Maybe no, but maybe it addresses a handful. That hype will bring people back. That hype will take anybody who's latent and have them play again, and then the game will be positive, and so you'll see a lot of positivity. However, as the community grows, though, I think as more and more veterans hit into that category and are willing to speak up about it, I think that is in and of itself a good thing. I think the discussion is a good thing. We should encourage these kind of critiques. We should encourage these kind of videos. We should encourage each other to be as honest as we possibly can be when it comes to where we're feeling, how we're playing, what we have going on in our lives. And that's something that I think is to be commended and hopefully, championed by the wider Final Fantasy XIV community. Will it happen? I don't know, because social media is a weird, mixed bag of chips, right? You have people who, are just trolling. You have people who are, it is their one and only thing. It's the thing that they live for. And any critique is like you're insulting their mom or their girlfriend or their wife or something like that, or their husband. So at the end of the day, that's why I'm always worried about censorship. That's why I'm always worried about that. And I know people come out of the woodworks when we talk about this here. And at the end of the day, I'm going to disagree with you, because censorship only leads to more censorship, and it doesn't actually make it better. Just because you want to have that, that belief, life isn't that way. You're going to run up against people who don't agree with that. And if you can't handle those discussions, you need to get your life in order in a way. You need to get yourself into a place of confidence that you can have those discussions and be perfectly fine with agreeing to disagree. But I wish you luck, especially if you fall in that category. But if you don't and you're still here, thank you so much for being here. If you guys enjoyed, we'll be doing part 3, on the channel. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to check out the the Instagram link in the top of the description to further continue to grow that out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for this this part, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next one. But until then, take care.